She thought she had destroyed the evidence. She was wrong. Hillary Clinton walked into the Senate Intelligence Committee hearing room like she owned the building. And why wouldn't she? She'd been walking these halls for 3 decades. Secretary of State, Senator, presidential nominee, the most powerful woman in American political history. The marble corridors of the Russell Senate building were practically named after her. Her legal team, 4 attorneys from Williams and Connolly, Washington's most expensive firm, flanked her like Secret Service. Her designer pantsuit was steel gray, her hair freshly styled, her chin lifted at that particular angle the cameras loved. She had requested this hearing herself, demanded it actually. When FBI Director Kash Patel announced his Crossfire Hurricane document review, Clinton's team saw an opportunity to go on offense. Attack Patel publicly, brand him as a partisan hack, control the narrative before he could control the evidence. The gallery was packed. Progressive activists wore matching Protect Democracy t-shirts. CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times had sent their top political correspondents. The stories about Patel's impending humiliation were already half-written on their laptops. Clinton took her seat at the witness table and didn't wait to be recognized. "Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to address this committee today," she began, her voice carrying the practiced authority of 1,000 press conferences. "Because what Director Patel is doing to the FBI is nothing short of a constitutional crisis." She turned to face Patel directly. Her eyes locked onto him with the precision of a woman who had stared down Vladimir Putin across a negotiating table and hadn't blinked. "You are dismantling the premier law enforcement agency in the world to settle personal grudges. You have no qualifications for this position. You were a mid-level congressional staffer who wrote a memo that was widely discredited by intelligence professionals across both parties, and somehow parlayed that into running the FBI. That's not merit. That's loyalty." The gallery erupted in applause. Several Democratic senators nodded approvingly. This was going exactly as planned. Clinton leaned forward, her voice sharpening. "You've fired career agents who dedicated their lives to protecting this country. You've purged senior leadership, men and women with decades of counterterrorism experience, because they had the audacity to investigate your boss. You've turned the FBI from the world's most respected law enforcement agency into Donald Trump's personal revenge operation." She let that land, then twisted the knife. "And now you're rummaging through old files looking for something, anything, to justify this witch hunt against the people who had the courage to do what you never did. Follow the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of politics." She paused for effect, turning to the cameras. "So let me be perfectly clear, Director Patel. I have spent 30 years in public service. I have been investigated, interrogated, and examined more thoroughly than any public figure in American history. I was cleared every single time." She punctuated each word with a tap on the table. "I am not afraid of you. I am not afraid of your files. And the American people are not fooled by this charade." A standing ovation from the progressive section of the gallery. People were on their feet cheering. The mainstream media reporters were grinning at each other. This was the Clinton they loved. Fierce, unafraid, dominant. The Washington Post correspondent was already drafting a headline. "Clinton eviscerates FBI director in Senate showdown." Kash Patel sat at the opposite end of the witness table. He was shorter than most people expected from television. Dark suit, no tie. He never wore ties, with reading glasses perched on his nose and a single manila folder closed on the table in front of him. Throughout Clinton's entire tirade, he hadn't looked up once. He was writing something on a legal pad, his expression as calm as a man filling out a grocery list. When the applause finally died down, Patel looked up. He smiled. Not a political smile, not a camera smile. The smile of a man who had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Thank you, Mrs. Clinton," he said, his voice surprisingly soft after her thunder. "You mentioned my qualifications. Let's discuss those for a moment." He uncapped his pen and set it down carefully on the legal pad. "I started my career as a public defender in Miami. I represented people who couldn't afford attorneys, drug addicts, immigrants, single mothers accused of crimes they didn't commit. Then I became a federal prosecutor under President Obama, not Trump, Obama, where I put Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists behind bars." He paused, letting that sink in. "Then I became chief investigator for the House Intelligence Committee, where I uncovered the biggest law enforcement scandal in modern American history. And yes, I wrote the Nunes memo." He tapped the folder. "Every word of which has been proven true." Clinton opened her mouth to interrupt, but Patel raised a finger, polite, patient, devastating. "You'll get your turn, ma'am. Right now, it's mine." He opened the manila folder. The committee room, which had been buzzing with whispered conversations, went dead silent. Something about the way he opened it slowly, deliberately, told everyone in the room that whatever was inside would change everything. "You say I'm rummaging through old files," Patel said, pulling out the first document. "That's interesting because what I found wasn't in any file. It was in a locked room at FBI headquarters that nobody was supposed to know about." He looked directly at Clinton. "Room B7034. Have you heard of it, Mrs. Clinton?" Clinton's expression didn't change, but her lead attorney shifted in his seat. "In July 2025, my team discovered thousands of documents stuffed into burn bags in that room. Documents related to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Documents that were supposed to have been destroyed." He held up a photograph. "This is what we found. Burn bags, military-grade disposal containers filled with evidence, stacked from floor to ceiling. Somebody hid them there. Somebody wanted them gone." The gallery had gone quiet. Even Clinton's supporters had stopped murmuring. "And Mrs. Clinton," Patel continued, his voice dropping lower, "every single one of those documents leads back to you." Clinton's confident smile froze. The hunter had become the hunted. Patel organized the documents in front of him with the methodical precision of a man who had built cases against terrorists. He wasn't rushing. A good prosecutor never rushes. "Let me walk the committee through what was in those burn bags," he began. "Because this evidence was hidden from congressional oversight for nearly a decade. Hidden from the American people. Hidden from the Durham investigation." He held up the first document, a thick stack of papers with FBI classification markings. "These are internal Crossfire Hurricane memos from 2016. They were never disclosed to Congress. They were never part of the Durham report. They were stuffed into burn bags in a locked room." He read from the first page. "Source reliability assessment. Christopher Steele, uncorroborated. Primary subsource, unreliable. Recommendation, do not use as basis for FISA application." Patel looked up. An FBI analyst wrote this in September 2016, 1 month before the first FISA warrant was obtained against Carter Page. The FBI's own analyst said the Steele dossier was unreliable and somebody buried that assessment in a burn bag. Clinton's lead attorney leaned forward. "Director Patel, my client has no connection to internal FBI assessments." "Doesn't she?" Patel pulled out another document. "This is the classified annex of the Durham report. It was never released to the public. It was found in those same burn bags." He began reading. "The Clinton campaign conceived and planned the Trump-Russia narrative as early as February 2016. A campaign strategy memo dated February 2016 stated, "Scandalous revelations of business relations between Trump and Russian mafia." The committee room stirred. Several reporters stopped typing and looked up. February 2016, Patel repeated slowly. There was no FBI investigation in February 2016. There was no evidence of Russian collusion in February 2016. There were no FISA warrants. There were no informants. There was nothing. But your campaign was already writing the script. He looked at Clinton. You invented the Russia hoax, Mrs. Clinton, before any investigation existed, before any evidence existed. You created the narrative first. Then you went looking for someone to make it look real. Clinton straightened in her chair. Opposition research is a normal part of political campaigns. Opposition research is legal. Patel agreed. What you did next was not. He pulled out a financial flowchart, a single page with arrows connecting boxes designed to be understood by anyone looking at it. Your campaign paid $12.4 million to the law firm Perkins Coie. Perkins Coie paid Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS paid Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence officer who hadn't set foot in Russia in years. Steele compiled a dossier of unverified allegations against Donald Trump. He traced the money trail with his finger. You laundered the payments through a law firm so your name wouldn't appear on any FEC filings. You reported the payments as legal services, $12.4 million for legal services. He looked at the committee. That's the most expensive legal opinion in American history. And it wasn't a legal opinion at all. It was a political weapon. He held up another document. The Federal Election Commission investigated these payments. They found that your campaign and the DNC violated federal law by misreporting them. Your campaign was fined $8,000. The DNC was fined $15,000 for lying about what the money was for. One Democratic senator leaned over to his aide and whispered something. The aide shook his head slowly. But the fine isn't the crime, Patel continued. The crime is what happened to that dossier after Steele compiled it. He pulled out a timeline chart. September 2016. Your campaign advisor, Jake Sullivan, personally briefed reporters on the dossier's allegations before the election. He didn't just mention it casually. He held background meetings with reporters from major outlets. He hand-delivered the narrative your campaign had paid millions to create. October 2016. The FBI used the dossier as the primary basis for a FISA warrant to surveil Carter Page, an American citizen. A FISA warrant, that's the most powerful surveillance tool in the federal government. It allows the government to monitor every phone call, every email, every text message, every financial transaction, everything. And they obtained it based on a document your campaign paid for. January 2017, BuzzFeed published the dossier. By then, your campaign had already spent months seeding it to journalists across Washington. The story didn't break on its own. It was planted, cultivated, and then harvested at exactly the right moment. I had no control over what the FBI— You had every control, Patel interrupted, his voice, still calm but cutting like a scalpel. Because the FBI didn't find the Steele dossier on their own. Your campaign fed it to them. Your people walked it into FBI headquarters. And when the FBI's own analyst said it was unreliable, somebody made that assessment disappear. He tapped the burn bag document. Into this room, into these bags where it sat for 8 years, until I found it. The progressive activists in the gallery had gone completely silent. Several were checking their phones, reading the live coverage with expressions of growing concern. But we're not done with the dossier, Patel said, pulling out another set of papers. Because I want to talk about Igor Danchenko." Clinton's face tightened. Danchenko was Steele's primary subsource, the man who supposedly provided the intelligence in the dossier. In January 2017, the FBI interviewed Danchenko. He told them the dossier was based on, and I'm quoting from the FBI's own notes, bar talk, rumor, and speculation. Patel held up the FBI interview notes. Bar talk. The FBI knew in January 2017 that the entire dossier, the document used to justify surveilling an American citizen, the document that launched 3 years of investigations, the document that consumed an entire presidency, was based on bar talk and rumor collected by a man who had never met his supposed sources face to face. He set the notes down carefully. And they renewed the FISA warrant 3 more times using that same dossier as primary evidence. 4 warrants total, each one requiring an FBI agent to swear under oath that the evidence was reliable. Each one a lie. He pulled out one more document from this section. This is the FBI's application for the 4th FISA renewal. An FBI lawyer named Kevin Kleinsmith was responsible for verifying the evidence. Instead, he altered an email to make Carter Page look more suspicious. He literally changed the words in a government document to keep the surveillance going. Patel's voice hardened for the first time. Kevin Kleinsmith pled guilty to a federal crime. He altered evidence to spy on an American citizen. And the surveillance he helped maintain was based on a dossier that your campaign paid for, that your people fed to the FBI, and that the FBI's own analyst said was worthless. 3 Democratic senators stood and left the room. The exodus had begun. "Shall we take a break, Mrs. Clinton?" Patel asked pleasantly. "Because next we need to discuss 33,000 emails, and those are even more interesting." When the committee reconvened, the Democratic side of the room was noticeably thinner. Clinton had returned with an additional attorney, her 5th, and a bottle of water she hadn't touched. Her earlier confidence had been replaced by something harder, more guarded. The face of a woman preparing for a siege. Patel seemed refreshed. He sat down, opened a new section of his folder, and got straight to it. "Mrs. Clinton, when you served as Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013, you conducted official government business on a private email server located in the basement of your home in Chappaqua, New York. Is that correct?" "This has been thoroughly investigated," Clinton said, her voice tight. "Director Comey cleared me twice." "Did he?" Patel pulled out a document. "Because in those burn bags, we found something Director Comey never shared with the public." He held up a thick report with FBI markings. "This is an internal FBI assessment from 2016. It was written by the team assigned to review your emails. Let me read the key finding." He read slowly, letting every word land. Investigation of Clinton email server was deliberately limited in scope by senior DOJ officials. Key witnesses were granted immunity without being required to provide testimony or physical evidence. The Anthony Weiner laptop, containing approximately 340,000 Clinton-related emails, was reviewed in only 12 days, a time frame inconsistent with a thorough forensic examination given the volume of materials. Patel looked up. 340,000 emails in 12 days. The original investigation reviewed 30,000 emails over 12 months, but somehow 340,000 emails on the Weiner laptop were cleared in less than 2 weeks. He set the document down. Does that math make sense to anyone in this room? Silence. But that's not the most disturbing part. Patel pulled out another document. This is a draft of Director Comey's public statement exonerating you. It's dated May 2nd, 2016. He paused. Your FBI interview was on July 2nd, 2016, 2 months later. Director Comey wrote his conclusion before he even interviewed you. Clinton's lead attorney stood. Director Patel, the sequence of drafting— I'm not finished, Counselor. Patel's voice was quiet, but carried absolute authority. The attorney sat back down. In that draft, Comey originally wrote that your handling of classified information was grossly negligent. Those are important words, Mrs. Clinton, because under federal law, gross negligence in handling classified materials is a felony. It carries up to 10 years in federal prison. He held up two documents side by side. The draft says grossly negligent. The final public statement says extremely careless. Same behavior, different words. One is a crime, the other isn't. He set the documents down. Somebody changed those words. Somebody decided that a presidential candidate would not be charged with a felony regardless of the evidence, and the original draft, the one with the real assessment, was supposed to be destroyed. He tapped the burn bag. It wasn't. He pulled out one more document, a memo with FBI letterhead. But it gets worse. This memo shows that on June 27, 2016, 5 days before your interview, Attorney General Loretta Lynch met privately with your husband, Bill Clinton, on a tarmac at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. A 30-minute meeting on a private plane. Patel looked at the committee. The Attorney General of the United States met privately with the spouse of the subject of a federal investigation 5 days before the critical interview. Both parties claimed they discussed grandchildren and golf. He let the absurdity of that statement fill the room. After that meeting, Lynch recused herself, but not really. She said she would accept whatever recommendation the FBI made, a recommendation that Director Comey had already written 2 months earlier. The fix was in before your interview ever happened. The gallery was now completely split. Clinton's supporters had gone from cheering to silence. The conservative section was shaking their heads in visible disgust. "Let me paint the complete picture," Patel said. Your husband meets the Attorney General on a tarmac. 5 days later, the FBI interviews you on a Saturday, the July 4th weekend, when nobody is watching. 2 days after that, Comey reads a statement he wrote 2 months earlier, exonerating you. Then, the original draft with the word grossly negligent is locked away in a burn bag. He counted on his fingers. Tarmac meeting, weekend interview, pre-written exoneration, evidence destroyed. 4 steps. 4 people who decided the law didn't apply to you. Clinton's jaw was clenched so tight, the muscles in her neck were visible. Her attorneys were writing furiously, but their expression said they knew there was nothing to write that could fix this. Now, let's talk about the 33,000 emails you deleted, Patel continued. In March 2015, you received a congressional subpoena ordering you to preserve all emails on your private server. A lawful subpoena, a legal obligation. He pulled out a technical report. Between March 25th and March 31st, 2015, days after receiving that subpoena, a technician used a program called BleachBit to permanently destroy 33,000 emails on your server. BleachBit doesn't just delete files, it overwrites them so they can never be recovered. Those were personal emails about yoga and Chelsea's wedding, were they? Patel pulled out another document. Because the FBI recovered fragments, not all of them, BleachBit did its job well, but enough. And some of those fragments contained classified information. Not personal emails, government secrets. He held up a photograph. And then there were the phones. Your staff destroyed 13 mobile devices with hammers. Hammers, Mrs. Clinton. Not factory reset. Not secure disposal through proper government channels. Not turning them over to investigators. Hammers. They took BlackBerry devices containing government communications and smashed them into pieces on a conference table. He let the image sink in. I spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor. I prosecuted terrorists, drug traffickers, money launderers. If any government employee, any clerk, any intern, any mid-level bureaucrat destroyed subpoenaed evidence with bleach bit and smashed phones with hammers, they would be charged with obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, and contempt of Congress. 3 federal crimes minimum. They would be in handcuffs within a week. He looked at Clinton. But you weren't charged. You weren't even seriously questioned about it, because somebody decided the rules didn't apply to you. Somebody decided that Hillary Clinton destroying subpoenaed evidence was different from anyone else destroying subpoenaed evidence. He paused. It's not different. The law is the law, or at least it's supposed to be. A Democratic aide in the gallery quietly folded up his Clinton 2024 button and slipped it into his pocket. But here's what keeps me up at night, Patel said, his voice dropping. It's not the emails themselves. It's what your foundation was doing while those emails were being sent. Clinton's fifth attorney began whispering urgently. Clinton waved her off. Don't you dare, Clinton said, her composure cracking for the first time. Don't you dare go there. Patel looked at her with something close to sympathy. Mrs. Clinton, I have to, because the evidence demands it. Patel's demeanor shifted. The courtroom ease and occasional half-smile disappeared. What replaced it was the cold focus of a national security prosecutor. The Clinton Foundation, he began, received over $2 billion in donations between 2001 and 2015. During the period you served as Secretary of State, 2009 to 2013, donations spiked dramatically. Foreign governments, foreign corporations, and foreign individuals poured hundreds of millions of dollars into your family's foundation while you were making decisions that directly affected their interests. He pulled out a massive document. It looked like a phone book. This is a cross-reference analysis. On the left column, Clinton Foundation donors. On the right column, State Department actions favorable to those donors. In the center column, the timeline. He opened to a flagged page. Saudi Arabia donated $10 million to the Clinton Foundation between 2009 and 2012. During that same period, your State Department approved $29 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia. That's a 97% increase over the previous administration. He turned to another page. The government of Qatar donated between $1 million and $5 million. Boeing donated $1 million. Your State Department approved an $8 billion Boeing aircraft deal with Qatar shortly after. Another page. The Kingdom of Bahrain donated up to $100,000. Your State Department approved arms sales to Bahrain even as they were violently suppressing pro-democracy protesters. Tear gas, rubber bullets, activists dragged from their homes, and you kept sending them weapons. He turned another page. The Ukrainian oligarch Viktor Pinchuk donated up to $25 million shortly after he gained access to a State Department program that had previously rejected his application. Another page. The government of Algeria donated $500,000 without State Department pre-approval, which was required. Your team didn't report it. When journalists discovered it, the foundation called it an oversight. He looked up. A $500,000 oversight. He closed the phone book and set it down with a thud. I could go on for hours. There are 154 donors in this document, but I think the committee understands the pattern. Clinton's lead attorney stood again. These are coincidences. Correlation does not. Sit down, counselor. I'm establishing a pattern. Patel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The attorney sat. 85 of 154 donors who met with you personally at the State Department received favorable government decisions within 90 days of their donation to the Clinton Foundation. He let the number hang, 85 out of 154. That's a 55% success rate for anyone who donated to your foundation and then asked for a meeting. The State Department doesn't have a 55% approval rate for anything, unless you're paying for access. He paused. Think about that number. If you donated to the Clinton Foundation and requested a meeting with the Secretary of State, you had better than a coin flip chance of getting a favorable government decision. Better than 50-50. Not because your case was strong, because your check cleared. Patel pulled out a new set of documents from the burn bags. But here's what makes this criminal rather than just suspicious. These are FBI field office reports from 2015 and 2016. FBI agents in 4 cities, New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and Little Rock, were actively investigating the Clinton Foundation for public corruption. They had developed confidential sources inside the foundation. They had financial records showing the exact timing of donations and decisions. They had testimony from former foundation employees who described the pay-to-play system in detail. His voice hardened. One source told the New York field office, and I'm reading directly from the burn bag document, there was an unwritten rule. Big donors got meetings. Meetings led to favorable outcomes. Everyone knew. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew. And then the Obama-Biden Department of Justice shut it all down. He held up a memo. This memo from a senior DOJ official instructs FBI leadership to stand down on the Clinton Foundation investigation. The word "stand down" appears 3 times. Not pause, not reassess, stand down. FBI agents who had spent months building a case were told to stop. Not because the evidence was weak, but because the timing was politically inconvenient. Patel's jaw tightened. I was a federal prosecutor. I built cases brick by brick the way you're supposed to. When you tell a team of dedicated agents to stand down on a case they've worked for months, you don't just kill an investigation. You kill their faith in the system. Clinton's face had gone from guarded to ashen. The FBI agents protested, Patel continued. Multiple agents documented their objections. One agent wrote, and this was in the burn bags too, "We have sufficient evidence to proceed with a full investigation. The order to stand down is not based on evidentiary assessment, but on political considerations. I am documenting this for the record." Patel looked at the committee. That agent's career ended 6 months later, transferred to a field office in the middle of nowhere. His case files were seized. His evidence was locked away. Until now, because somebody preserved that evidence. Somebody at the FBI couldn't stomach what was being done. They took the case files, put them in those burn bags, and hid them in room B7034 instead of destroying them. He turned to Clinton. Whoever that person was, they just ended your career. Because everything those agents found, the donor cross-references, the timeline analysis, the witness statements, the financial records, all of it is now in the possession of the United States Department of Justice. The committee room was utterly silent. Donations go in, Patel said quietly. Favorable decisions come out. FBI investigations get killed. Evidence gets buried. That's not public service, Mrs. Clinton. That's a criminal enterprise. Clinton stared at Patel with an expression that mixed fury with fear. We haven't discussed the Epstein connection yet, Patel said, reaching for the thickest section of his folder. But I think the committee needs to understand. I will not, Clinton started to shout, half rising from her chair. Mrs. Clinton, the committee chairman's voice cut through the room. You will remain seated, and you will allow Director Patel to complete his presentation. This is a Senate hearing, not a campaign rally. Clinton slowly sat back down. Her hands were trembling. Patel paused. He cleaned his glasses slowly. "I'm going to set aside one line of inquiry," Patel said carefully, "because certain matters are the subject of ongoing federal proceedings. But there is something I need the committee to understand about the relationship between all of these scandals." He pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is a timeline starting in 2009 and ending in 2025. 2009 to 2013. You run the State Department on a private server. Foreign governments pour money into your foundation. Arms deals are approved. FBI agents are told to stand down. 2015. Congress subpoenas your emails. You destroy 33,000 of them. Staff smashes phones. 2016. Your campaign pays $12.4 million for the Steele dossier. Your people feed it to the FBI. An FBI analyst who flags it as unreliable is overruled. His assessment disappears. 2016. Director Comey drafts your exoneration 2 months before interviewing you. The draft disappears. 2016 to 2019. The FBI renews FISA surveillance 4 times based on the discredited dossier. An FBI lawyer alters evidence. 2019. The Durham investigation begins. Key evidence has already been moved to room B7034 in burn bags. 2024. The Durham report is published, but its most damaging annex remains classified. That annex was in the burn bags. He looked at the committee. 16 years. 16 years of evidence being created, hidden, altered, destroyed, and buried. And through all of it, one person remained at the center. One person benefited from every cover-up. One person's fingerprints are on every document in those burn bags. You, Mrs. Clinton. The gallery was motionless. "This wasn't a series of isolated incidents," Patel continued. "This was a machine. You built a machine that converted public office into private wealth, that turned intelligence agencies into political weapons, and that destroyed anyone who tried to expose it. You didn't just break the law. You broke the people whose job it was to enforce it." He held up the photograph one last time. "These bags represent the conscience of people inside the FBI, who knew what was happening and couldn't stop it. They decided the truth was more important than their career. They put these documents in burn bags, carried them to room B7034, locked the door, and walked away, hoping." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "My parents came to this country from India with nothing. They believed in a simple idea, that in America, nobody is above the law. This folder proves that for 16 years, you operated as though you were. And for 16 years, you were right. The system protected you. That era is over. Today, the truth won." Clinton made one last attempt. "This is a political prosecution. You are a Trump loyalist carrying out a vendetta. Every document you've shown is cherry-picked." Patel didn't flinch. "Mrs. Clinton, I prosecuted terrorists under Barack Obama. I don't care about parties. I care about evidence. There are over 4,000 pages of evidence in those burn bags. The committee will receive all of them. You had 30 years to come clean. You could have said, 'I made mistakes.' But you didn't. You attacked anyone who questioned you. You called them conspiracy theorists. You called them sexist. You called them deplorable. The people who questioned you were FBI agents doing their jobs, and you destroyed every one of them." At that moment, the committee chairman picked up a letter. This morning, Senator Charles Grassley transmitted criminal referrals to the Department of Justice regarding obstruction of justice relating to email evidence, public corruption relating to the Clinton Foundation, and conspiracy to defraud the United States relating to the Steele dossier. The room erupted. Reporters scrambled for the exits. Democratic aides were on their phones, their faces white. Clinton herself sat motionless. Reconocimiento. The recognition of a woman who had played the game at the highest level for 30 years and had finally lost. One by one, the dominoes began falling. Democratic senators began releasing statements. No one is above the law. They were cutting her loose. CNN reported they had obtained the leaked donor cross-reference document. Associated Press confirmed the criminal referrals. A Democratic senator who had stayed through the hearing stood up. "I'm sorry, Hillary, but this is bigger than loyalty." Patel stood and looked at her one last time. "Mrs. Clinton, this isn't personal. I have a job." For 8 years, the evidence was locked in a room that nobody was supposed to find. Somebody found it. He walked out into the chaos with the quiet calm of a man who had done exactly what he came to do. Hillary Clinton sat alone at the witness table. Her attorneys were already packing. Her supporters had already left. The Queen sat alone on her throne, and the throne was burning. By evening, the Clinton Foundation announced it was voluntarily pausing all fundraising pending a review. Donors began requesting refunds. Board members resigned. A special counsel was appointed within 30 days. Forensic analysts, the ones who had been silenced years ago, began giving interviews with fury. Kash Patel gave one simple interview from his hometown. "In America, the law is the law. It doesn't matter who you are. I believed my parents then. I believe them now. And today, I proved them right." Somewhere, nobody knows where, the person who had saved those burn bags was watching too. The truth was free. Accountability had finally come to Washington. The evidence was devastating.